I currently reside in Reno, Nevada, but this particular event took place during my teenage years when I was living with my parents. At the time, I was deep in my gaming phase and spent most of my days holed up in my room playing Call of Duty on my computer. The heat during summertime in Reno was unbearable, making it preferable to stay inside in the cool air conditioning. Luckily, my parents traveled often, and I had the house to myself most of the time. I remember this incident occurring on a Friday night, or a night before a day off from school. I had stayed up late after submitting a paper that was due that evening, eager to get it over with. Afterwards, I had to run some errands, as per my mom's orders, since they would be gone for a while. My dad always made sure I earned my keep by leaving cash for me to use for groceries, but I had to show them the receipt to avoid pocketing any extra money. With a shopping list in hand, I drove to Whole Foods in my old Honda Civic, my first car. It took about an hour door-to-door while navigating through the store with my cart. As I was standing in line to check out, a man behind me struck up a conversation about one of the items I was buying. For some reason, he continued talking as I bagged my groceries and even followed me outside. It wasn't until later that I realized how unsettling and uncomfortable the encounter had been. As I stood there, he kept talking to me like a broken record, not paying attention to anyone else around us. It was weird, but I continued to be nice and engage in the conversation. When it was finally time to leave, I bid him a polite farewell and made my way out to my car in the scorching hot June sun. The heat was unbearable, and I just wanted to get home quickly. As I packed my trunk and got ready to leave, I couldn't help but think about how much I did not want to go back outside once I got home. After completing all of my necessary errands, it was already dark outside. Without hesitation, I logged onto my computer and started playing Call of Duty Black Ops with my friend Johnny. We were both committed to spending the entire night playing and ranking up our levels. I put on my noise-canceling Logitech headset before diving into another intense game of Team Deathmatch. About 2 hours into our marathon gaming session, I decided it was time for a quick break to make dinner. After informing Johnny that I would be back in an hour or so, I headed downstairs to the kitchen. As I sat down at the table to eat my pasta, a faint thump caught my attention from upstairs. My instincts told me it could have been anything, a stray cat or a gust of wind, but something about it made me feel uneasy. I quickly finished my meal and went back upstairs, making sure to lock the front door before settling back into my chair for more gaming. It had become a habit for me to leave the door unlocked for extended periods of time, since our neighborhood was considered safe, but that strange thump had reminded me to take precautionary measures. I never considered the idea of a break-in as a real possibility. It was just something you hear about on the news, but never expect to happen to you. When I went upstairs, I called out my brother Tristan's name into the hallway, even though I knew he wasn't supposed to be home. I heard a noise and couldn't resist the urge to check if anyone was there. When no one responded, I went back to my room and resumed playing Call of Duty with my friend Johnny. A few games later, I glanced over at the doorway into the dark hallway. The nightlight plugged into the outlet illuminated part of it in a blue glow, but the rest was pitch black. It didn't bother me until Johnny said he was going to take a bathroom break and walked away from our game. As we waited for him in the lobby, I looked at my phone and then back towards the hallway. Something had changed. Now I could see through the crack of the door and into the hallway beyond. My initial reaction was pure terror. Someone had been knocking on my door just moments ago. Acting on pure instinct, I spun my chair around to face my bed behind me. To my horror, there was a man sitting there with an unnaturally upright posture and his hands resting calmly on his thighs. His gaze seemed to hold a sinister smile as he watched me in silence. I was so startled that I jumped out of my seat and onto my desk, causing everything on it to fall to the ground. In a state of panic, I screamed at the man, demanding to know what he wanted. But instead of answering, he only continued to smile, revealing his teeth like it was all some sort of sick joke. I didn't waste any time. I ran out of my room and into the hallway, stopping halfway down to look back at the closed door. Suddenly, I heard the telltale sound of springs creaking, and the man slowly walked into view, standing in the doorway. I yelled at him once again, demanding to know his intentions. His response was slow and stuttered, as if he were enjoying watching me squirm. He asked if he could join in, his voice dripping with malicious intent. Feeling completely helpless and unsure of how to handle the situation, I ran down the stairs towards the landline phone in the kitchen, my cell phone still upstairs in my room. My heart raced as I grabbed the phone and a kitchen knife for protection. With trembling hands, I screamed at the intruder that they needed to leave immediately, or I would call 911. As I waited for a response, I heard heavy footsteps descending down the stairs. The last time I saw the man was as he walked past the kitchen doorway, his eyes fixated on me with an unsettling intensity before disappearing out the front door. Without hesitation, I slammed and locked the door behind him, frantically dialing 911 as I tried to process what had just happened. The fear and adrenaline coursed through my veins as I realized how close I had come to a potentially dangerous situation. It was a night I would never forget, haunted by the thought that this intruder could have easily become something much more sinister if I hadn't acted quickly enough. As I stood in my darkened living room, a sense of shame washed over me like a wave crashing on the shore. For the first time in my life, I had left the door completely unlocked, and now I couldn't help but wonder if someone had taken advantage of my carelessness. My phone shook slightly in my hand as I debated whether or not to tell my parents. Eventually, I mustered up the courage and dialed their number, feeling a lump form in my throat as it rang. My mother's voice crackled through the speaker, her concern palpable even through the static. As I explained the situation, her worry quickly turned to anger, her words becoming more sharp and furious with each passing second. She handed the phone to my father, who calmly told me to check every room in the house for any signs of theft. I moved through the rooms with trepidation, my heart pounding loudly in my ears. To my relief, everything seemed to be in place, but there was a sense of unease that lingered in the air. The man who had entered my home didn't seem overtly hostile, but something about him felt off and wrong. The image of him sitting on my bed and watching me through the crack in the door sent shivers down my spine. The whole experience was haunting and left me questioning what his true intentions were. Was he just looking for valuables to steal? Or was there something more sinister at play? The thought made me shiver uncontrollably, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of violation that lingered long after he was gone. This is a story that I am not proud to tell, for it reveals my naivety and lack of understanding when it comes to interactions with the opposite sex. Back in middle school and early high school, I was at a loss on how to talk to girls. Like many boys my age, I struggled to find the right words or actions to impress them. Despite having friends and participating in typical 8th grade activities, I had never kissed a girl or even approached one romantically. As I navigated through this awkward phase, some of my friends boasted about their romantic encounters with girls, making me feel even more pressure. But despite my growing interest in girls, I still found myself struggling to approach them in any way beyond friendship. It seemed like only yesterday that we were teasing and making fun of girls, but suddenly we were supposed to like them? In middle school and early high school, I was an avid gamer. Being 13 years old in 2010, my voice still had a trace of prepubescent squeakiness. My favorite pastimes included playing console games like GTA 4 and Call of Duty, as well as immersing myself in online MMORPGs such as GNU. This particular game involved leveling up by defeating monsters, allowing access to higher-level challenges and hunting grounds. The online community was incredibly active, with countless players from all over the world. Even my older brother dabbled in playing this game, though my dedication far surpassed his. I was part of a guild and belonged to a specific town within the game's virtual world. One day, through some means that escape my memory now, I befriended a female player who happened to be at a much higher level than me. Her online persona was Medusa, and every time I logged in, she would be there ready to chat. Our conversations flowed easily, and we quickly formed a gaming partnership. Together, we would join parties, and take on all sorts of virtual monsters, sharing the experience points we earned. But it wasn't just about the game. We would also talk for hours about our lives. She seemed to know everything about me, my age, my town, even personal family details. And eventually she opened up to me as well, revealing her real name, Jessica. It was strange to feel such a strong connection with someone based solely on our online interactions. We had never seen each other's faces or heard each other's voices, but it was like having a pen pal, only better. We both lived in New York State, just an hour away from each other. As our chats became more frequent and intimate, we started talking about meeting in person one day. Of course, that would require exchanging phone numbers, something I didn't have at the time since I only had an iPod Touch. Thankfully, I discovered a texting app that allowed me to message people with cell phones through my device. Feeling brave, I sent her a picture of myself, a cringy selfie of my 8th grade self trying to look cool. She called me cute and reciprocated by sending back a photo of herself. From her appearance, she looked a few years older than me, around 15 years old, just as she had told me. I found her very attractive and couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. As our conversations veered into flirtation and romance, it suddenly struck us both. We were minors and couldn't just hop into a car and drive an hour away to meet each other. But that didn't stop us from dreaming about the possibility of one day being together in person. However, she apparently had a solution for this. She told me her older sister had friends that lived near me and could potentially give her a ride. My 13-year-old self was ecstatic at this news. I wanted to wait for a day and night when my parents wouldn't be home so I could have the house to myself. Luckily, about a week later, my parents planned to spend the entire weekend at their vacation home in the Hamptons. This meant it would just be my 18-year-old brother and I at home. I begged my brother to go out with his friends for the night so I could have the house to myself and finally meet Jessica. He agreed reluctantly, probably because he saw how excited I was. I gave Jessica my address and told her to come on Saturday whenever she wanted. She said she would come at night, but didn't give me an exact time. At this point, we still hadn't spoken on the phone and I had never heard her voice. I was so nervous all day that I couldn't even concentrate enough to play video games. Instead, I spent the day cleaning my room, fixing my appearance and rehearsing what to say in the initial moments of meeting her. Then, finally, I got a message from Jessica saying she had arrived. I jumped up from my bed and ran to the front door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw no one outside. Confused, I messaged her back saying I didn't see her. She replied that she must have gotten the wrong house and asked for a minute to find the right one. My heart sank as I went back inside and shut the door. A few moments later, Jessica messaged again saying she was at the front door. With a rush of excitement, I opened the door and stepped onto the dark and quiet street. There were no cars or people around. Confused and a bit scared, I went back inside and messaged her saying I didn't see her. She replied, "Oh, I must have the wrong house. Give me a minute to find the right one." My heart raced as I waited for her to finally arrive. My heart races as I lock the door, trying to calm my nerves. I sit on the living room couch, playing games on my iPod to distract myself. A message from her pops up again, sending shivers down my spine. "She's here," she says. My hands tremble as I respond with a shaky request to ring the bell to confirm her presence. The doorbell echoes through the empty house, and my anxiety skyrockets. I cautiously approach the door, peering through the peephole but seeing no one there. I call out her name, hoping for a familiar voice on the other side of the door. But instead, a hand appears and knocks on the door before a bald, creepy man steps into view and announces himself as Medusa from Gonu. Panic sets in and I stumble away from the door, hand clamped over my mouth in shock and disgust. How could I have been talking to this sick man all this time? My mind reels as I reach for my brother's phone, desperate for help. But he doesn't answer and the doorbell continues to ring incessantly. Fear consumes me and I retreat to my bedroom, locking myself in and clutching the house phone tightly. The only light in the house is coming from my room, making me an easy target as I peer out of my window, overlooking the dark yard of our corner house. Every sound sends chills down my spine as I wait for someone, anyone, to come save me from this terrifying situation. I frantically switched off my lamp, heart racing as I heard a faint tapping on the window. Through the sliver of open blind, I saw the silhouette of a man leering in at me. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed my brother's number for the third time. "Please come home now," I begged as the man continued to knock and whisper strange platitudes about our supposed connection. My brother picked up this time and I quickly explained the situation, but as I spoke, a twisted realization dawned on me. The person outside was not Jessica, but a grown man pretending to be her. Dread coiled in my stomach as my brother promised to come home with his friends. I stayed on the phone with him as I raced upstairs to hide in my parents' bedroom. The man's messages flooded my app, demanding to talk and insisting that he had lied about his identity for a reason. When my brother finally arrived with his 3 friends, they immediately confronted the creepy stranger outside. I couldn't resist the urge to see what was happening, so I cautiously stepped outside. My adrenaline surged as I watched my brother and his friends tower over the short, sick man who had been manipulating me. His pathetic defense was that he was only concerned for my well-being, but we all knew the truth. He had planned to harm me in some way. The anger and fear boiled inside of me as I yelled out at him, asking why he would pretend to be someone else just to get close to me. He stammered and tried to backpedal, but it was no use. My brother and his friends pushed him towards his car, leaving him cowering and defeated. My brother's shoe connected with a satisfying thud against the taillight of the car, while one of his friends launched a rock at the window. The vehicle sped off down the road, never to be seen again. I couldn't believe it. My brother and his friends had just saved me from a potentially dangerous situation. My heart was racing from the adrenaline and fear coursing through my veins. I couldn't thank them enough for coming to my aid. They had potentially saved me from a seriously sick creep breaking into our house. As grateful as I was, the whole experience left me feeling humiliated and disturbed. It was unsettling to think that for all that time, I had been opening up to someone online who I thought was a girl, my own age on a game, but now realizing that it was actually some creepy grown man with a different agenda, the discomfort and pain set in. It was hard to come to terms with being deceived and manipulated in such a way. It made me question who else I had unknowingly interacted with on the internet.